Hello, everyone. Welcome to another edition of In the Spotlight. I'm Mike Kenichi. I'm real excited because tonight's guest has been making an impact for over 40 years in the world of entertainment. She was had a recurring role on The Facts of Life. She also was on the series Deadwood. She's a motivational speaker. She also had her own column in Ability Magazine, which we're going to talk about. Uh, she has done it all in her career, and it is my honor to introduce to you the one and only Geri Jewell. And Geri, thank you for coming on today. It's a real honor for me.
Thank you for having me, Mike.
So, Geri, interestingly enough, as a young kid, I know you had aspirations to be an actress, but really, it was a letter you wrote to Carol Burnett that really kind of, I would say made you decide that you wanted to really go forth and do what you love to do. So, talk about that a little bit.
Well, I was still in special ed until I was 15 years old, and I actually wrote a play, two plays, while I was in special ed when I was about 12 or 13, and I started writing Carol Burnett, and I told her that when I grew up, I wanted to be like her because she had such a wonderful sense of humor about herself. And people were laughing with her, not at her. And that was something that I really wanted to do. And she wrote me back whatever she could. And the essence of every letter that I ever received from her was always the same: go for it, get into acting in every capacity. She told me there was no guarantee that I would become professional. There's no guarantees in life, period. The important thing is to put out the effort and to try, because nobody knows what they can do unless they try. And coming from Carol Burnett to a little kid of 12 and 13, that's very powerful.
And I think, Geri, what's really remarkable about Carol is the fact that she did write you back because she was as big a star as anybody. And for her to respond to her fans like that and to write the letter back, it shows that she read the mail. Because I often wonder sometimes, especially when I was younger, do they really read the stuff or do they have their, publicists write it? But it just goes to show that she really appreciated her fans, and it's a shame because not everybody does sometimes. And she never forsaked her fans. She really appreciated them. And writing back to you, that alone had to just make you say, you know what, I know I could do this because this someone like Carol Burnett is behind me.
Yeah, it was extremely influential, to say the least. And I finally ordered tickets to the Carol Burnett show when I was about 17. And I took some friends of mine with me. I had four tickets. And remember in the beginning of the show when she used to raise the house lights to accept questions from the audience? I was so excited. Wow, I get to talk to Carol Burnett. And I raised my hand, and she never called on me. And they started the show, and I was like turning to my friends and complaining. It was like, I can't believe she didn't call on me. I wanted to talk to her. And my friends were telling me to shut up. You know, the show is going on. Will you let go of it? So then, about halfway through the show, um, Kim Conway cracked up Harvey Korman so bad that they had to stop and take a break. And of course, I went back to complaining to my friend. I can't believe he didn't call on me. I wanted to talk to her. And my friend Audrey looked at me and she said, well, you better think of what you want to say because she's coming right over here. Oh, she is not. Yes, she is. And I turned around. Carol was right there. She extended her arm. She said, hi, I'm Carol Burnett. You must be Geri Jewell. My friends were stunned that she knew who I was at 16 or 17. And I said, how'd you know? How'd you know it was Geri? And she said, oh, just a clue, just a lucky guess. I mean, I had cerebral palsy and I had written her poems and poetry and letters for a long time. So she put two and two together. And she said, I love your poetry. I love your letters. And I want you to know that I put your poetry up in my office so everybody can read it. And I was like, oh my God, thank you. Thank you so much. And I said, Carol, can you do me one more favor? And that's she's trying to do a show here, Mike.
Yeah.
Oh, what else, Ray? Well, I wrote a paper about you for my English class, and I brought it with me. If you sign it, I'll get a better grade. And she signed it.
And Geri, I gotta believe that you had to be on cloud nine. The fact that she knew your last name, a lot of times people can know first names, but the fact that she said your full name going into the audience like that, she's as big a star as anybody is in TV. I mean, you just had to walk out of that building that night like feeling like a million bucks. Like you probably couldn't even go to sleep that night.
Oh, I couldn't. I mean, I was walking on air. It was surreal.
Yeah.
My friend couldn't even believe she remembered my name.
Right. And Geri, the thing is, we don't see enough of that anymore. Like the type of show Carol did, TV variety and stuff. We just don't see that anymore. And that's a shame because I used to love the variety shows, when they did the different skits and things like that. And Carol was just so phenomenal at that. But we really don't see that today. And that's kind of unfortunate. What is your feelings on that?
I think it's unfortunate that we can't do that anymore. Television has changed dramatically. I don't even know if we could do it, if it would be embraced. It would definitely be embraced by us boomers.
Yeah.
But young people have no idea that this kind of entertainment even existed at one time.
No, they really don't. And that's that, like I said, that's the unfortunate thing. Geri, let me ask you, I know Carol was obviously the biggest influence, but were there any other influences that made you want to get into acting besides Carol?
Uh, at that time, no,
Right.
no. Mm, David Cassidy. No, but that even came later. That even came later. That
Yeah.
wasn't until high school before I discovered. Well, I didn't discover him.
Yeah. Well, I'll tell you what, he was as big of a, you know, teen idol as anybody was back then. I
Oh
mean,
yeah,
that show, opened up so many different types of doors because it kind of implemented music with TV comedy and it, just another, again, I always say this, Geri, that TV in the 70s and 80s, there was nothing like it because, I mean, you had just such good television every day, all the time.
it was, and it was powerful, and it educated, and it entertained, and I think a lot of television has become way too dark.
Yeah.
It's just we need to lighten the world. We need to add some light and kindness and all of that. We need it desperately right now.
Yeah, we definitely do. Geri, I talked about Carol Burnett and the fact that she came in the audience and what a feeling that had to be for you and the fact that she wrote back to you. But then you get discovered by another Hollywood legend in Norman Lear, and it doesn't get any better than that. And it's kind of funny, Geri, like people don't realize the great sense of humor you have because I think it was him at one point said to you, you're ahead of your time and you responded with, okay, so that means I wait 3 more months, right? So You know,
Yeah,
it's
he saw me perform at the second annual Media Access Awards in 1980. And he did come up to me afterwards and he introduced himself. He said, "You know, you're way before your time, kid." And I said, "So, wait a couple months." And he did. 2 or 3 months later, he cast me as Blair's cousin on The Facts of Life.
yeah. Now, Geri, would you say Facts of Life was your first big break in the business? I mean, had you done any? I know a lot of actors sometimes they'll do commercials, they'll do small roles. Was Facts of Life really like your first big break?
It was my first big break, yes.
Yeah.
Yeah, it gave me an exposure that I didn't have previously, absolutely.
And Geri, that show, like again, I mean, talk about this is how you know how impactful you were and how great of an actress you could be because that show was as popular as any show at the time. I mean, and what I loved about Facts of Life, Geri, is even though it was comedy, it was also drama too. It touched on some very important issues. I mean, those actresses all did a phenomenal job. And even like the recurring actresses and actors such as yourself, I mean, what a show that was. Just talk about getting the part. How did the obviously Norman casted you in that, but what was his idea for you when he originally had you, read for Geri?
Well, I never really read for you. I
Right.
never really, that didn't occur. I think Facts of Life downsized by the time Norman Lear saw me. Remember, they had that huge cast in the beginning and they had to cut a lot of girls,
Yeah,
you know, including Molly Ringwald.
which
I
is
mean,
surprising. Yeah.
wow. And so they couldn't add another student because they had just hired Nancy McKeon and they just let a lot of kids go. So what are we going to do with someone like Geri? We can't have her as another student, which would have been brilliant
Right.
because to have a student with a disability in a private school, that would have been phenomenal. But the next best thing was Norman's idea to cast me as Blair's cousin. And Joel Kimmel and Ann Gibbs wrote the episode, and it received the highest Nielsen ratings that Facts of Life had ever gotten up to that point. So it was pretty amazing.
And let me ask you, Geri. I mean, I know that you never let anything stand in your way. You weren't going to let any obstacle stop you from doing what you loved. But were you nervous that first day on set?
You know, I had so much support from Lisa, from Charlotte, from the rest of the cast, from the producers. I mean, I was nervous like anybody would be, but I was also very hugely supported, especially by Lisa Welcher. In fact, we're still friends to this day. And there was a skit, a song and dance thing that I did T for two with her.
Yes.
And what people don't realize is that dancing and singing at the same time is very, very difficult with cerebral palsy because you're trying to get both parts of the brain to work together,
Yeah.
and CP challenges that. And Lisa rehearsed that with me for hours and hours and hours in her dressing room to get it down, the movements and the words at the same time. I mean, it was incredible.
Yeah. And Geri, quite a few years now, I've been trying to find her to interview her because I've always admired her. And the reason is because I've never heard anybody say anything but positive things about her, how helpful she is. She was such a team player, uh, willing to do anything. And the fact that she took the time, because a lot of that had to be on her own time to try to get that
Of
scene
course
down.
it was.
It really says a lot about Lisa and the type of person she is because she was, listen, they were all stars on that show, but I think, Lisa was as big a star as anybody in TV at that time. I mean, she was really popular. So for her to do that, that really says a lot about her as a person.
It does. I mean, the whole cast was supportive. I mean, there wasn't anybody I didn't like on the cast. I unfortunately I didn't work on the show long enough to work with George Clooney. I would have loved that.
Yeah. And the thing is too, your character Jerry, it brought such a, great addition to the cast. And what it really did too is when you're just talking about characters, it made fans see that the character Blair, she kind of comes across as rich girl, very stuck up sometimes, but we got to see what Blair really was as a human being. And she had a good heart. And I mean, she loved her cousin Geri. And as time went on, it was, episodes with yourself and then the stuff she did with the other cast, you really root for the character Blair Warner because she really had a heart of gold.
She did. She did. And that was a part of the reason that I got cast as her cousin because they wanted to soften Blair's image a little bit. And it gave her some depth that she didn't have previously.
Yeah. And let me ask you this, Geri. You did, I think, about, I want to say 12 episodes, maybe 12 to 15. Is there any one particular episode that you enjoyed doing more than any of the others?
The first one.
Yeah, because that was the toughest, right? I mean, you had to get your foot.
No, it was the best one. It was the it was very well written. It was groundbreaking because they never had a person with a visible disability ever on a primetime series before. I was the first, and the first woman with a disability on a primetime series. So it was really powerful.
Yeah, I mean, and it really was. And like I said, that show at the time, I mean, it was just so groundbreaking, the things they were doing. Um, Norman, like I said, he's a genius. He really is. And I mean, they touched on so many issues. And that's what shows and sitcoms in the 80s for me as a kid did for me, is it taught me a lot about life lessons. And that's what shows like Different Strokes, The Facts of Life,
Yes.
Family Ties, all those shows really touched on serious issues with comedy blended in.
Yeah, that's true. That's absolutely on the family other shows.
Yeah, it really was something that, like I said, now when you watch, and I don't want to like disrespect TV today, but when there's comedy going on, you do not see any, serious moments. It's just all laughs the entire time. I think you might have froze on me, Geri. Are you there? All
Oh,
right.
there you
Yep, I
are.
see. So, Geri, let me ask you this. When you're after Facts of Life, you would go on to do other things. You guest starred on some stuff, but if I remember correctly, you at times didn't always want to do things that revolved around your disability. You wanted to be able to do other things, correct?
Well, of course, I wanted more auditions, more opportunity to audition just for roles that were there for everybody my age. I mean, I could have been a teacher, I could have been a lawyer, I could have been anything. Uh, but casting was not there yet, and unless my agent saw disability in the script, they wouldn't even send me out for just a female role of my age. So that was frustrating, you know.
Yeah, and it's kind of
I can remember one time I I was a guest on the cerebral palsy telethon many times. And one time I did the muscular dystrophy telethon. My good friend Chad Everett called me and said, "Get down here, do some charity work for the telethon for MD." So I went down to the studio. They let me in. And the woman at the desk said, "You don't have muscular dystrophy." I said, "So what? Chad Everett doesn't have muscular dystrophy either." You know, it was like, oh, okay. See, they're looking at the disability instead of the person who showed up to volunteer. Does that make sense?
Yeah, that's, I'm sure at times too, Jerry, that, you're able to laugh about it now, but that had to be a little frustrating sometimes, that, you know, they couldn't understand that you wanted to help, you wanted to do whatever you could to help, and they just like right away said, she has muscular dystrophy. That had to be tough. That's how they kind of characterized you at times, you know?
Actually, I even laughed then. I had a sense of humor about it even then. I think I said something like, you know, I have friends with muscular dystrophy. Does that count? And I really did.
Yeah. So, Jerry, let me ask you this. You did something very cool that, I'm sure any person would like the opportunity to do. I think it was around 1985, 84 or 85. You got to speak at the White House. That had to be something like that, has got to be one of the highlights of your career. Talk about that experience a little bit.
It was 85, and the Reagan administration was putting on a program called Inspire 85, and it was to uh, show people, successful people with disabilities. And I was asked to do stand up, and it was an amazing opportunity. And yeah, it was, again, my life has been one surreal moment after another. It's like I'm being guided. I've always been guided spiritually, and I always believe that if we can get out of our own way, we'll all do a lot better. We get in our own way.
Right. So, Jerry, talk to me about doing stand up, because, again, that, I'm sure it's fun, but at the same time, it could be a little nerve wracking because you're getting up there in front of a crowd and you really have to make sure you're making the audience laugh. Like, you'll know within the first few minutes if you have them or if you're boring them. How tough can it be to do stand up? But it could also be enjoyable as well.
Well, I love doing stand up, and there are times when I have bombed. I mean, if a comedian says that they've never bombed, they're lying.
Yeah.
uh, but it I I didn't ever want to be a stand-up comic. I That's how my career started. I started doing stand-up in 1978, and it was a door open to me, and I walked through it, and it was amazing. I mean, when you do well as a stand-up comic, when you do have a great night, man, it's a high that's not equivalent to much else. It's like, wow, I did it.
Yeah. And now, were there any venues that you enjoyed doing it at more than others? I mean, is there one particular venue that you enjoy doing your stand up at?
Truthfully, I I like writing better than anything, and I always have, but a lot of people don't know that. Even my mom was shocked when I went into stand up. She couldn't believe it. She said, "You're a writer." And I said, "Yeah, yeah, I know." But, and she was right, you know. I've been writing since I was about 8 years old. I love writing. I'll do stand up. Stand up is a little bit difficult for me today because it's harder for me to stand up. Aging and cerebral palsy. No,
Right.
I mean, I'm sure I can do it in a chair. I'm sure I can find a stool and sit down, but but I'm not complaining because I've been extremely blessed and there wasn't too much I couldn't do. I could ride a bike, I could ride a skateboard, I could swim in the ocean, even though lifeguards never really respected me in the ocean. They always thought I was drowning. And they would come in with their inner tubes and I'd be kicking them. Hey, I'm swimming. This is the way I swim.
Right, right. And Jerry, you do a lot of motivational speaking, and let me ask you, I mean, I'm sure you love talking at different events and sharing your story, but also inspiring people. What is the one thing? What's like the mission statement when you're out there speaking to different uh, people about going through life challenges and stuff? What message do you try to send when you speak?
I, there's many messages that I try to convey, but I think the most important one is to believe in yourself, no matter what, no matter what other people say about you or believe about you. If you lose that internal belief in yourself, you lose your way. Don't give that away to people. Keep going, never give up. I mean, I'm still in the game. I'm still here at 60. I'm 67. I'm going to be 68 this year.
You know what? That's very young, Jerry. Don't let anybody tell you any different. I mean, you see what you know. I look at a guy like Norman Lloyd, who I loved as an actor. He lived to be 106. So you know what? Don't look at 67 as old. It's not.
Yeah, you probably have a point. In fact, my newest book that I just wrote called Geri Jewels and Gems, um, Norman Lear wrote the forward for me at 101.
Yeah, yeah.
101 years old, he wrote my forward.
He is one of a kind. I mean, and he is, like I said, a legend in the business. And I wanted to talk about that book. What made you decide to write it, and what was the inspiration behind it?
But I loved writing for Ability Magazine. I enjoyed it for the period that I did it. And then when COVID hit and California lockdown came along, I was trying to think of what can I do to inspire people, to give people hope, um, to make people laugh without having to get up on stage and do it. And it was the column from Ability, and I called Chuck Cooper, the editor of Ability magazine, and asked him if I could do a coffee table book with it. And he said, absolutely, just as long as you give Ability credit. And of course, I would give Ability credit. And I love the book. And it's a fun book. It's got a lot of different topics in it because it's not an autobiography. It's just different subjects that I have written about. And I do have a sense of humor, even in my writing.
And what do you like to do more, Jerry? Do you like to perform or write? I mean, which one do you love more?
Writing,
Writing, yeah,
writing.
because you could kind of like tell your story and how you want to do it and put it into words. And I would think that like when you start writing, you don't stop for a while.
It's, well, it's the same thing with stand up. If I'm doing a really good stand up set and you ask me what jokes I just told on stage, I couldn't tell you because I go to a higher place and that's where my writing is. I can write and then I'll read it 2 days later. Did I write
Yeah.
that? And I write from a different realm, and it's very spiritual. It's very peaceful, and I enjoy the process.
Right. And speaking of writing, I think it was around 2011 you wrote your autobiography called "I'm Walking
Yes.
as Straight as I Can." Talk about that and a lot of that is, telling your story, and years of just living life and doing what you've wanted to do. But it's really like a history of your life. So talk about that a little bit.
Well, Deadwood had ended, my role on Deadwood, and I didn't know they were going to do a movie 10 years later, but it wouldn't have made a difference anyway. But basically, I thought there's nothing to lose. I might as well just lay it all out there and let people know the truth about my life and my career and so forth. And it was very risky, very challenging, but it was the truth. And I think I was also looking for validation for what I went through. My first manager embezzled all my money from Facts of Life, left me with $25 in the bank. See, a lot of people didn't know what I'd been through and what I had overcome to survive. And actually, it was that book that got me the gig with Ability Magazine, because they interviewed me for that book, and he was so impressed with the writing of that book, he asked me to write the column for Ability. So, yay!
And how, after you put that book all together, first off, how long did it take you to write that book, if you had to guess?
Well, don't forget, all the columns had already been written, but
Right.
I did write a new preface and an afterword. And I remember I called Norman Lear and asked him if he would be interested in looking at my new book, and he said, of course, come on over to the house. So I went over there, and I said, Norman, do you think? And I felt kind of guilty because 101, I'm asking him to write forward for my book. But I said, Norman, I know you're really busy. I know you have a lot on your plate, but do you think you could write a column? Write a forward for my book? It's a coffee table book, Norman. and and he said, well, what if they don't have a coffee table? Well, I'm sure they'll find some place for it. And he kissed me on the cheek. He said, of course I will. And about 2 weeks later, there it was. He wrote the forward for me. He promised me, and he did it.
Yeah. And how gratifying was it that stuff that the experiences you went through, the obstacles you went through, it's all being put in a story that you could tell your fans, your friends, your colleagues and stuff like that. They get to kind of, people who knew you over the years and saw some of the things you went through, and then they get to read this, and it's all your work. You're putting it all together. How rewarding was that for you?
It was very rewarding. Not everybody liked it, but that's reality. That's a fact of life.
Oh, pun intended. Yeah.
Not everybody's gonna like your work, but for the most part, it was very well received. Um, it's and don't forget, I had done Deadwood previously before even that, so I was already on the map with Fact of Life and Deadwood, so it was pretty incredible.
Right. So
And,
Geri, you mentioned Deadwood, and again, you go from a successful series in the '80s to a series, in the 21st century. So you got to work in both the 20th and the 21st.
oh,
So I see you, I could hear you and stuff. So talk to me about how great it was to work on Deadwood.
well, it's interesting because In 1999, I broke my neck from C1 to C7. My neck is now 45% titanium. It gives a whole new meaning to having a stiff neck.
Yeah.
But I was a wheelchair user for about a year and a lot of physical therapy and a lot of, my sister took me into her home to help care for me so I didn't have to be put in a nursing home at that age. And I had to pick up Botox at a pharmacy, which I do to this day. I get 3 vials of Botox injected in my neck, shoulders, and back for chronic pain. And at that time, the patients used to pick up the Botox and deliver it to the doctors. They don't do that anymore because a lot of people picked up the Botox and sold it for 5 times more. I never did. Don't look at me. But this one particular morning, I was in so much pain. I had no Botox in my neck. It had totally worn off. And I drove to Santa Monica to pick up the Botox at the pharmacy. I couldn't even get dressed that morning because my arms hurt so bad from the neck pain. And I couldn't even button a button. So I thought, okay, you know what I'm going to do? I'm going to go in my pajamas and wear a coat over that. Nobody's going to recognize me at 8:30 in the morning. Yeah, don't worry about it. So I'm standing in line at the pharmacy, and this man turns around. He goes, "Oh my God, you're Geri Jewell." And I didn't even want to admit I was who I was because I looked so bad that morning. And I said, "Well, yeah, I am." And he goes, "Well, I'm a huge fan of yours. I've watched your work for years. You inspire me. You've made me laugh. But I haven't seen you on TV in a long time. What do you do with your life now?" I said, "Botox." He said, "No, seriously." And I said, "Seriously, I'm doing Botox." And he said, "You want a television series?" I said, "Wait a minute, this is a pharmacy. You shouldn't play with someone's mind in a pharmacy of all places."
Yeah.
And he said, "In case you don't recognize me, my name is David Milch."
Oh, big time writer. Yeah.
Yeah, the executive producer of NYPD Blue. And he said, "Yep." And I said, "Well, Mr. Milch, I'm flattered that you like my work and that you believe in me, but let's get real. I would make a real shitty cop." And he said, "No, no, 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 no. I just signed a contract with HBO. I'm doing a new Western called Deadwood. You want to do a Western?" And I looked up as far as my titanium neck would let me. And I said, "God, you have a real quirky sense of humor. I'm standing here with cerebral palsy, depending on Botox, a titanium neck, and David Mills wants me to ride a horse." and, and he asked the pharmacist for a sheet of paper, and she gave him a prescription pad for an antidepressant. And he wrote his phone number on it and said, "Call me." And I was the very first character that was cast on Deadwood, even before Ian McShane.
Wow. And I mean, it doesn't get any better than that, Geri. I mean, it really does.
No, it does not.
So, Geri,
And
yeah, go ahead.
eventually,
Yeah.
eventually, I will write another book, the continuation of walking, because it's been a lot of years since walking. And there's a lot of wonderful stories and interesting things that happened to me in that time. So that's one of my next books.
Right. So, Geri, I would think you're not somebody that ever wants people to feel sorry for you. But after everything that you've had to face in your life, you've had some hardships. But with all that said, the career you've had. I mean, some people don't even get the career you've had. I mean, people struggle to even, you know, get like small parts in TV, and you've had these big parts in TV. You got to be good friends with Carol Burnett. You've gotten to speak at the White House, write books, write magazines. I mean, you got to be just proud of, never mind your career, but proud of who you are as a person, because you have really made, in my opinion, a big impact in life.
Thank you. That means a lot to me. I'm very, very blessed. In fact, I spoke at the Obama White House twice, and I also was the stand-up comic host for the what was it? The let me think. The Disability Powerball at the President's Club the night before he was inaugurated, Obama.
Yeah.
And I did that as well. I mean, I have there's nothing for me to feel sorry for, and all the hardships that I've had, every single one of them, if we can learn from them and grow and help someone else go through it in a better way in their own life, it's worth it. I mean, life is a big school. It's not always going to be hunky-dory roses. We have something to learn in this lifetime. And I think all my hardships were lessons that I had to learn from.
Right.
We all do.
Right. So, Geri, let me ask you before we go, what could we expect from Geri Jewell going forward towards the end of 24 and so forth? I mean, what projects do you have coming up?
Well, I'm also writing a book about a monkey called Buck, and it's a children's book. And
Yeah.
I'm writing it on behalf of my sister Gloria, who passed away 7 years ago of cancer. And she wanted to write this book herself. And I promised her on her deathbed that I would finish the book for her. And I intend to do that. And it's about a monkey named Buck who gets cancer and overcomes it and survives.
Wow.
And it's for children.
And it's a children's book, correct?
Yes.
Yeah. And I think that's great. I think that, the children's books, I mean, people don't realize that's how kids really learn to, advance on their reading when they have these great children's books, because it keeps them, it keeps them engaged, but it's also teaching them stuff. So I always felt like children's books are just some of the best that you could ever do. And I mean, they really are probably some of the best books to write.
Thank you. You just made my sister smile on the other side.
Yeah. Well, Geri, I want to thank you for giving me a few minutes today. It was a real honor for me. I've watched your career, like I said, since the early 80s. And to see what you've done in your career and all the remarkable things, for me to be able to get to finally interview you, this was a real highlight in my career. So thank you for making that happen. I really appreciate it.
Thank you, Mike. I enjoyed that time together.
Thank you. And folks, when it comes to being inspirational, motivated, any term you want to use, you can always take a message from Geri Jewell. She is a hardworking woman. She's dedicated, committed, and she gives you 150% all the time. And she goes out there and makes her dreams come true. She's not going to let anything ever stop her. And she is a credit not only to Hollywood entertainment, but she's a credit to the game of life. And we all are very lucky that we've been able to watch her work over the years. For In the Spotlight, I'm Mike Kenichi. That's Geri Jewell saying good night, everyone. All right, perfect. So what I'll do, Geri,
now the sound going in and out.
I can hear
is that something that you're going to correct?
Yeah, don't worry. That it may sound like